Are South African banks still relevant to entrepreneurs, startups, and small and medium enterprises in South Africa, or are they blocking the future? My name is Dumisan, and in this video, I wanted to discuss this in depth because I see it in practice in the industry, and talking to entrepreneurs, innovators, and small to medium enterprise owners. You hear the same thing and the same stories about them facing issues with getting funding, or some stories you may not believe, some stories are surreal. But the reality is that in South Africa, especially as a black individual, it may take you more than what you may think of to get funding with the big four or with the traditional banks in South Africa. And we're going to also call a spade as we are discussing this, because people try to run away from issues like racial issues and how they may impact you even in getting funding and sourcing funding. So it is important that we talk about the things that most people actually encounter. So what is the purpose of traditional banks in South Africa when it comes to entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses? And this is a question that many people think about, but few say it out loud because in some instances people are afraid to say so. Because if you listen to the lived experiences of thousands of founders, innovators, and young business owners, the answer is deeply uncomfortable and concerning. And because I also talk about small business and the issues that they face in the industry, especially with regard to accounting, taxation, and everything, where we discuss this. I decided I'm going to be talking about this as well. So banks are supposed to be intermediaries of capital. They're supposed to be institutions that take money from where it is lying idle or not being used to where it can be productive, to where it can be used or implemented into something that can benefit the economy. That is the bank's economic role. That is their economic role, and that is their social mandate. But in South Africa, for a very large segment of the population, if you want to be truthful, especially young entrepreneurs, startups, and black-owned SMEs, banks are becoming gatekeepers of exclusion rather than enablers of innovation. And if we are serious about economic transformation, this must be questioned honestly, and I think with speed. So here's the contradiction no one wants to confront. The truth is that entrepreneurs are told to innovate and every time, to take some risks, to build the future, and also help to employ others so that this unemployment can go down and things like that. But the banks, on the other hand, demand some certainty if they are going to give you funding. They demand predictability, they demand security or collateral. Things that by definition do not exist at the start of innovation for most people, especially for those that were previously disadvantaged. Because the truth is, where can a 22-year-old who is coming from a poor family get security or collateral? Most likely they're not coming from a house where they've got property title deeds for it. So there is no way that this person can actually access funding by also providing some surety or some collateral for it. It's not possible. It's not possible for many of black folks in South Africa. So if a 22-year-old is developing a platform, a manufacturing process, a biotech solution, or a logistics innovation, they are usually asked about property as a security, which they don't have, and that's where their sourcing for funding stops. They are asked for multi-year financial forecasts, going 10 years to forecast how you're going to make money, how much profits and stuff. This is just an innovation and idea that they have. Why would you ask for all those such things? What don't you think of other models that can be applied, that can help this young person? If their idea is viable, I'm sure there will be a lot that can be done, rather than just say you don't have this, you don't have that, and then you don't get it. Now a dream dies like that. Usually they are also asked for historical performance data. Where are they going to get such data when they are trying to start right now? If those things are not there, they are asked for personal guarantees. And usually they also need some surety in that regard, because they need to be somebody who says on your behalf, if this thing fails, I will be responsible for paying back that money. Most of these people are usually first generation that are trying to come out, and they're coming from families that may not have any security or collateral at all, or any other person that can stand on their behalf to say, no, we will be able to take care of this if this fails. This means only a few that are beneficiaries of even previous injustice usually are going to be the one who have these assets and can be able to actually continue to secure loaning and funding and things like that. Because where exactly is a 22-year-old in South Africa supposed to get security? Most young people do not own property. Most come from families that were structurally excluded by apartheid policies, from asset accumulation and things like that. Many are first generation entrepreneurs, like I also said before. So when a bank demands collateral, it's not making a neutral business decision. It is replicating historical inequality through financial policy. It's just put in an umbrella as financial policy, but in actual effect, it's a continuation. So this is, I think, is not by accident. It is systemic, and maybe planned. I'm not sure. So when we compare Africa, and by Africa we can also talk about South Africa in particular, which is my main focus. The regions like East Asia, especially China, they operate on a different system. And to be honestly, the difference with South African banks and those banks in those countries is very stark. It's clear. It's easy to see. In many parts of Asia, financial institutions, state-backed banks, and development banks or development funds operate on a totally different logic than what the banks in South Africa operate on. They fund potential. They fund they actually accept failure as part of innovation, so long the failure is reasonable. There are milestones, there are areas that we can compare to see if this person was doing things properly, but this was a total failure. It was something that they could not run away from. Then that's it. It's part of innovation anyway. Within that failure, something would have been already been understood or gained in the same instance. So they fund potential, not just protection from failure and risk and stuff like that. They accept failure as innovation. They use portfolio approaches rather than individual loan risk avoidance. It's no longer viable in 2026. We have got Vision 30s, Vision 2030, Vision 2050, and stuff like that. We can't be stuck with ideas that were viable in the 1920s. So in South Africa, banks largely operate on models developed back then, models designed for asset-heavy, slow-moving industrial economies. And I don't think it's something that we can continue. And because of that, the result is predictable. Innovation is underfunded, startups die early, entrepreneurs self-fund themselves with little money or no money until exhaustion or until they give up. And then something that was supposed to produce jobs, supposed to be successful, dies because a bank did not want to give funding. I understand there's risk and stuff, but the model needs to change. Now, entire industries never emerge if the funding is not given to people who have the ideas. So we then ask why Africa is behind, why is it lagging behind, why is it not in the levels of China and things like that. But the truth is we are financially suffocating our future before it can even breathe, because we are not funding the young ones that are supposed to take the future and make country move forward. And another very important thing that I'm not going to leave without discussing is the racial reality that we cannot keep avoiding anymore. And it's really true. We need to address the racial dimension in all honesty, without shouting, without others taking it as an attack, and without pretending it does not exist. It does exist. If you are a young entrepreneur or somebody wants funding and you go into a bank, you already are at a disadvantage, because the things that they are going to require are going to be way more than what they will require to a same person of your age who is white or who is Indian. That's the truth. You are going to have to pass some more hurdles and to prove that you are worthy to get that money. And this might not be the same case for a white guy who already have some assets that their grandfather left them for. So that's the reality. If you are black, young, and ambitious in South Africa, you face a compounded barrier, because you have less inherited wealth, you have less access to even informal capital networks, less tolerance to failure, according to their, and you're going to have to be scrutinized greatly more than your peers who are of other races. This is the truth, and we're going to say it. When banks demand security, they are effectively saying to a black person or to a previously disadvantaged person, only those who already have assets may access opportunity and funding. Yet there have been policies before independence where blacks were excluded from acquisition of assets. And the policies that are there even now, 30 years, have not been structurally reformed to address that even. So if such policies are going to continue, it means the same people and their children and their grandkids are going to be the ones that continue to benefit, because they will have assets in most cases. So I think this is not neutral policy. This is structural exclusion. And this is the truth. We're going to say it. Many dreams die quietly, not because the ideas were bad, but because the financial system never gave them enough oxygen to also breathe. And when those same banks come at a later stage, when a small business has suffered and they are now starting to do better or to do something meaningful, they come now and try to give funding to such banks. And when those to such companies, and when such companies now succeed, those banks congratulate themselves for backing successful businesses. Yet what they actually did was let participation. This business could have failed, but now because it's now a success story, they want to avail funding and things like that. That's what happens. Only when you have succeeded to a certain stage where you can produce those 5-year, 10-year projections, you have financial statements for past 10 years or so, that's when you can start getting some funding. And with so much restrictions, for that matter, that's the truth. So if banks are to remain relevant in an economy that needs innovation, especially in South Africa and Africa, they must rethink their role fundamentally, especially in the 2025, 2030s and going forward. Banks should not be asking, how do we eliminate, or how do they eliminate all the risks? They can't. The risks are going to be there. You need to weigh the innovations. You need to weigh the opportunities that whatever the idea is being brought can actually bring. It should be with the economy and its growth in mind, not with protection of and protecting themselves from risks anymore. Instead, they should be asking, how do we manage risk in a way that funds the future? This requires new models and not 1920 models anymore. Banks should be at the forefront of cash flow based lending, which other areas in Asia and Europe are doing, not continue to be stuck on asset based lendings. They need to think of portfolio funding, where multiple startups are funded knowing some may fail, so long good precautions are put together to say, no, this was a genuine failure, and no, you know what, we understood. But in most cases, safeguard and help this business to actually win. They should be focused and to be on the forefront of data-driven assessments using real transaction data instead of paper forecasts. They should use stage-based funding, where we say, no, your project is too risky, you don't have any security. We can avail this amount of money so that you can do this and this and this for now. If you succeed this, we avail some more money to do this and this and this. If you succeed, we avail another tranche of money to do that and that and that. And that is managed growth, not to say no to a young person who is looking for funding. That's what we call state-based funding, and that's what other countries do. We can't be stuck on policies that was drawn by our great-grandfathers who were dealing with issues that were of that period. Now, instead of demanding 5-year forecasts from startups, documents that are mostly fiction or fictitious, because innovators or small businesses would want to get that funding, and they will dramatize and do financial projections that may not be showing the real thing, because they want the funding. Banks should actually be embedding themselves into ecosystems where these innovators, universities, where the entrepreneurs are coming from, or incubators and industry accelerators systems are. Banks should be funding learning right from the beginning, and entrepreneur right from where it starts, and move with them throughout the process, not pretending that uncertainty can be eliminated. It can't be. So, and ironically, the way banks currently operate is not even rational from a long-term business perspective, if you are going to be truthful. And by refusing to fund early-stage innovation, banks actually miss out on future market leaders, because these are the people who are supposed to be changing the future. They also push entrepreneurs into foreign capital, which may be exploitative and may be very expensive. And if this thing goes fine or everything works well, those foreign capital are the one to rip off where banks were supposed to also rip off or to win. So by doing this, banks are encouraging dependence on expensive alternative financing, and they are also at the same time reducing their long-term customer loyalty, because a bank that funds a founder at 22 does not just fund or give a loan. It actually potentially funds a lifetime client relationship with that young person. They will always remember that bank is the one that made it possible and helped my dream. Now, but South African banks heavily depend or have chosen short-term safety over what could be a long-term relevance strategy, honestly. And to me, this is absurd. That is a strategic failure, I think, not just a moral one. So the real question is not whether entrepreneurs are risky. The question is whether South African banks are willing to evolve and change and move with times. If banks continue to operate as institutions that only fund the already wealthy or those with collateral and security, then they must accept the truth that they are not partners in development. They are not helping anything in developing South Africa, because if you want to develop South Africa, we need also to see those that were previously disadvantaged, or those that are coming from nothing, be empowered to also empower others. They are not engines of innovation if they continue to do this. They are custodians of the past. And when I mean the past, I mean even the apartheid policies. They are custodians of that. And no society builds a future by protecting yesterday's models. Yesterday's models no longer work anymore. Now, and if Africa is to change, finance must also change, because that's where the fuel for development comes from. If South Africa is to innovate, SADC is to innovate, and Africa is to innovate, capital must become more braver and willing to give. They can put other policies to make sure that that is governed well, but money should flow. Banks should not stand in front of progress demanding security that history denied to millions. So they should stand behind entrepreneurs, absorbing risk intelligently with structures and backing the future deliberately. The banks should be willing to do that deliberately. And until that happens, we will keep asking the question, or this question, louder and more honestly this time, because it needs to be addressed. Because who are our banks really for if they are not going to be funding those that can move things, change things, create employment and things like that? So I think this is something that I wanted to talk about, because I've been hearing it from most or more circles that I am in. I deal a lot with founders, directors, startups of small to medium businesses who wants to get funding for some things that they want to implement now, and they get hurdles. They find problems. This bank doesn't want to give loan. They say your finances are not in order. They say blah 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 blah. They want projections and things like that. They do not even look at the innovation or the idea. They just want to first of all see, do you have some certainty in something that shows you are doing fine, or your clients and stuff, and drafting 10 years projections. Who can project 10 years really and show that this is what is going to happen? Unless if it's to get you locked and say, this is what you said, it's not happening, now we can take your business. Because that's what banks also do. So we need to be clear about this. Now, thank you for watching, and please subscribe, follow, and share. And we share a lot of videos like this where you can learn, especially if you're an entrepreneur or small business owner. You can learn one or two things about accounting, about taxation, about so many things. And you can just scroll down our channel and find videos that are fitting and helpful for you. Thank you again, and please subscribe. Until next time.